There's a particular feeling that comes with discipline, not the feeling of accomplishment after you've done something difficult, not the pride that comes later, but the feeling right before. The moment when you know what you should do and every part of you resists it. It's not laziness, it's something stranger. It feels like trying to push against a current that's coming from inside you. Most people assume discipline is hard because it requires effort. But that's not quite right. Lots of things require effort that don't feel this way. The difficulty of discipline is different. It's uncomfortable in a way that feels almost existential, like you're fighting against what you are. This isn't a video about how to be more disciplined. It's about why discipline feels the way it does, and why for most people living today, that feeling has become more intense than it's ever been. Let's start with what discipline actually is. At its core, discipline is the ability to choose long-term value over immediate comfort, to do something that serves your future self at the expense of your present self. That's it. That's the entire mechanism. But notice what this requires. It requires you to experience discomfort now for a benefit you can only imagine. You have to feel bad in the present tense, in exchange for feeling good in the future tense. And your brain hates this trade. This isn't a personality flaw, it's how human nervous systems work. We evolved in environments where immediate threats and immediate rewards were what mattered. The animal that stopped to consider its long-term fitness goals while a predator approached didn't pass on its genes. The animal that ate the calorie-dense food right now, rather than saving it for a hypothetical future famine, survived. So we're built for immediacy. Our brains are prediction machines optimized for the present moment. They're constantly asking, what feels bad right now? What feels good right now? How do we move away from the first thing and toward the second thing? Discipline asks you to override this, to tell your prediction machine that it's wrong, that the thing that feels bad is actually good, that the thing that feels good is actually bad. And here's where it gets interesting, because this isn't just difficult, it creates a specific kind of psychological friction. When you try to be disciplined, you're not just doing something hard, you're doing something that contradicts your felt sense of reality. Your body is telling you one thing, your conscious mind is telling you another thing, and you have to act against the signal that feels more real. Think about the last time you tried to stick to a difficult routine. Maybe you wanted to wake up early, or eat differently, or stop checking your phone. What did it feel like? It probably didn't feel like lifting something heavy. It felt like being pulled. Like there was a force inside you that wanted to do the opposite thing. And when you resisted that force, it didn't go away. It got louder. This is what makes discipline so uniquely uncomfortable. It's not physical pain, it's not even mental effort in the traditional sense. It's the experience of being divided against yourself. Your brain experiences this division as a kind of error state, like when a computer tries to run two conflicting commands at once. The system doesn't know which signal to follow, so it produces a feeling. The feeling we call discomfort, or resistance, or craving. And then discipline asks you to sit in that feeling, to not resolve it, to let it exist without acting on it. This is why discipline feels so unnatural, because in every other area of life, when we feel discomfort, we do something to make it stop. We eat when we're hungry, we rest when we're tired, we check our phone when we're bored. The discomfort goes away and the system returns to equilibrium. Discipline is the practice of feeling discomfort and doing nothing about it, or worse, doing the thing that increases it. That's the baseline. That's what discipline has always been. But something has changed in the last few decades that's made this baseline friction much, much worse. Here's what's different about the world you live in now. 50 years ago, boredom was common. You'd sit in a waiting room with nothing to do. You'd stand in line at the grocery store and just stand there. You'd eat a meal, and that's all you'd be doing, eating. These moments of understimulation were built into daily life. Your brain experienced regular periods where nothing was happening, where you had to sit with your own thoughts, where the only sensory input was whatever was physically in front of you. Now think about your life today. When was the last time you were truly bored? Not frustrated, not tired, but actually unstimulated, with nothing capturing your attention for more than a few minutes. For most people, this almost never happens anymore, because the moment boredom begins, We have an infinite source of stimulation in our pocket. This might seem like a small change, like a convenience, but it's created something unprecedented in human history, an environment where your baseline level of stimulation is higher than your brain evolved to handle. Let me be specific about what this means. Your brain releases dopamine not when you get a reward, but when you anticipate one. When something in your environment signals that something good might be about to happen. This is what creates motivation, the feeling of wanting to do something. In a natural environment, dopamine spikes are rare. You'd see potential food, or a potential mate, or something novel that might be important. Your brain would release dopamine, you'd investigate, and then the dopamine would drop back down. But modern technology has figured out how to trigger these spikes constantly. Every notification is a potential reward. Every scroll is a potential interesting thing. Every video might be the one that's actually worth watching. So your dopamine system is constantly being activated, not by real rewards, but by the possibility of rewards. And here's what happens to a brain in this state. It recalibrates. When your dopamine baseline is constantly elevated, your brain adjusts. It turns down the sensitivity of your dopamine receptors. It's like when you walk into a bright room and your pupils constrict. The system adapts to the new level of stimulation, which means that normal activities that used to feel moderately rewarding, now feel like nothing. Reading a book used to be engaging, now it feels slow. Cooking a meal used to be pleasant, now it feels tedious. Having a conversation used to be stimulating enough on its own, now you're tempted to check your phone while someone's talking to you. This isn't because these activities got worse, it's because your brain's reward threshold changed. And this is where discipline becomes exponentially harder. Because discipline already required you to choose something that feels worse in the moment. But now, the gap between what feels good and what actually serves you has become a canyon. Doing something disciplined doesn't just feel slightly less pleasant than the easy thing. It feels impossibly boring compared to the easy thing. Because the easy thing has been engineered to hijack your dopamine system as efficiently as possible. So when you try to sit down and work on something difficult, your brain isn't just saying, "This is uncomfortable." It's screaming that you're being deprived, that there's something much more rewarding you could be doing right now, that this is unbearable. And the worst part? It's not lying. Given your brain's current calibration, difficult work really does feel unbearable compared to checking your phone. The felt sense of deprivation is real. This is why so many people describe discipline as feeling like withdrawal. Because in a very literal neurological sense, that's what it is. When you remove the constant dopamine stimulation, your brain experiences it as a loss, as something being taken away. And withdrawal is one of the most uncomfortable feelings a human can experience. It's designed to be. It's your brain trying to force you to return to the substance or behavior that was creating the artificial baseline. So modern life hasn't just made discipline harder. It's created a neurological environment where discipline feels like fighting an addiction, even if you're not addicted to anything in particular. But there's another dimension to this, something that goes beyond neurochemistry. Discipline requires structure, not just in the sense of routines and schedules, though it requires those too, but structure in the deeper sense, structure in your life, structure in your sense of who you are and what matters. Because here's what discipline actually means in practice. It means deciding that certain things are more important than others, that certain goals matter more than your moment-to-moment feelings, that your life is oriented towards something. And this is where we run into a specifically modern problem. Most human societies throughout history gave people structure by default, not because people were better or more disciplined back then, but because the structure was external. It was built into the fabric of daily life. You woke up at a certain time because that's when work started. You ate at certain times because that's when meals happened. You went to bed at a certain time because there was nothing else to do once it got dark. Your social role was largely predetermined. Your daily activities were circumscribed by necessity. The question of what to do with your time wasn't really a question. You did what needed to be done. This wasn't freedom. In many ways, it was the opposite. But it provided something. It provided external structure that your internal discipline could lean against. Now think about your life. You probably have vast amounts of freedom compared to any previous generation. Freedom to choose your career. Freedom to choose when you work. freedom to choose what you do with your leisure time, freedom to construct your own identity and values. This freedom is real, and it's valuable, but it comes with a hidden cost. When structure is external, discipline is easier because you're just following the path that's already laid out. When structure is internal, discipline becomes much harder because you first have to decide what the path is. You have to figure out what matters, what your values are, what you're trying to build, and then you have to hold that structure in place through pure internal commitment, while the rest of the world offers you infinite alternatives. This is exhausting in a way that's hard to articulate, because you're not just resisting temptation, you're maintaining the entire framework that makes resistance meaningful in the first place. Think about trying to stick to a workout routine. The physical difficulty of working out isn't the main problem. The main problem is continuing to believe that working out matters. Continuing to hold the value structure that says physical fitness is important enough to sacrifice comfort for. Because modern life will constantly offer you alternative narratives. Maybe productivity culture is toxic and you should rest more. Maybe physical appearance doesn't matter and you should reject beauty standards. Maybe structured exercise is boring and you should just move intuitively. These aren't necessarily wrong ideas, but they make discipline harder because they undermine the structural frame you're trying to maintain. This is what people mean when they talk about motivation. They're not really talking about energy or enthusiasm. They're talking about the ability to keep believing in the structure they've created, to keep treating their own goals as real and important when nothing external confirms this. And the problem is that modern culture is increasingly suspicious of structure itself. There's a cultural narrative that says structure is constraining, that discipline is about control and rigidity, that the healthy thing is to be flexible, to listen to your body, to honor your feelings, to be authentic to who you are in each moment. Again, these aren't necessarily wrong ideas, but they make disciplined actions psychologically harder. Because now you're not just fighting your brain's desire for immediate reward, you're fighting a cultural message that says fighting your brain is the problem. But there's something else happening when you try to be disciplined. Something that goes beyond dopamine or structure or cultural narratives. Discipline reveals patterns you might prefer not to see. Here's what I mean. When you commit to doing something consistently, you create data. Data about yourself, data about what you actually do when given a choice, about what you actually value when you're not performing for anyone else. If you decide you're going to write every morning and then you don't write most mornings, you learn something. Not just that you failed to write, but about what you chose to do instead, about what felt more urgent or more important or more necessary. And often what you learn is uncomfortable. You might learn that you value comfort more than you thought, that you're more avoidant than you believed, that the identity you have of yourself doesn't match your actual behavioral patterns. This is different from just failing at something. Failing at something you tried once doesn't tell you much. But failing at something you're trying to do consistently, that reveals something structural about how you operate. Discipline creates a mirror. And most people don't like what they see in that mirror. Because what you see is not who you want to be. It's who you actually are, revealed through the pattern of your choices over time. You see the gap between your aspirational self and your actual self, between the life you imagine you're building and the life you're actually living. And here's the thing about this gap. You can only avoid seeing it if you avoid committing to anything specific. If you never try to wake up at the same time every day, you never have to confront how much you prioritize sleep over your stated goals. If you never commit to a creative project, you never have to face your actual relationship with difficulty and uncertainty. If you never try to change your eating habits, you never have to see how you use food to manage emotional discomfort. This is why discipline feels so threatening. It's not just hard, it's revealing. It forces you to see patterns you've been successfully avoiding. And the patterns it reveals are often patterns of avoidance themselves. You might discover that you use distraction to avoid boredom, but then you discover that you use boredom to avoid uncomfortable emotions. And you use uncomfortable emotions to avoid acknowledging things about your life that you don't want to be true. Discipline pulls on one thread, and suddenly you're seeing the entire structure of your psychological avoidance system. This is why people often say discipline feels like exposure, like something is being revealed that was previously hidden. Because it is. You're used to your coping mechanisms being invisible. They just feel like how you are. your natural preferences, your personality. But when you try to be disciplined, these mechanisms become visible. They assert themselves, they create resistance. And you realize they're not just preferences, they're defenses, structures you've built to keep certain feelings at bay. And once you see them, you can't unsee them. This is perhaps the deepest source of resistance to discipline. Not that it's hard, but that it shows you things you don't want to know about yourself. It shows you that you're more driven by fear than you thought, more governed by habit than you believed, more controlled by immediate sensation than you'd like to admit. And it shows you this not through abstract self-reflection, but through concrete, daily failure, through the evidence of your own repeated choices. So, where does this leave us? Here's what we've established. Discipline is fundamentally uncomfortable because it requires acting against your immediate neurological signals. This has always been true, but modern life has made this baseline discomfort worse by creating an environment of constant dopamine stimulation that recalibrates your brain's reward threshold. And it's made it worse by removing external structure, which means discipline now requires you to maintain your own internal structure without cultural support. And it's made it worse by making discipline psychologically revealing, forcing you to confront patterns you'd rather avoid. The result is that discipline doesn't just feel difficult anymore. For most people, it feels impossible, or close to impossible, like pushing against a force that's always stronger than you are. And here's the uncomfortable truth. That feeling is probably permanent. Not because you can't become more disciplined, but because the feeling of discipline, the felt sense of resistance and discomfort, doesn't really go away. It just becomes more familiar. People often imagine that discipline will eventually feel natural, that if you do something long enough, it will stop being hard. That's not quite right. What happens is that you get better at tolerating the discomfort. You become less shocked by it, less reactive to it. The resistance is still there, but your relationship to the resistance changes. This is different from what most people hope for. Most people hope that discipline will eventually feel good, that the healthy choice will become the easy choice, that their brain will recalibrate in the other direction so that doing the right thing feels as rewarding as checking their phone. But that's not how it works. Your brain doesn't recalibrate to make difficulty feel easy. It recalibrates to need more and more stimulation to feel anything at all. Which means that if you want to be disciplined in the modern world, you have to accept something uncomfortable. You have to accept that the right choice will probably always feel worse than the easy choice. That doing valuable work will probably always feel more boring than distraction. That the gap between what serves you and what tempts you will remain wide. This isn't pessimism, it's clarity about what you're actually dealing with. Because once you stop waiting for discipline to feel good, you can start building a different relationship with discomfort itself. You can start seeing the feeling of resistance, not as evidence that you're doing something wrong, but as evidence that you're doing something meaningful, that you're choosing something that matters over something that merely feels good. The discomfort becomes information. It tells you that you're in the space where actual change happens, where your future self diverges from your current self. This doesn't make discipline easy, but it makes it less confusing, less like you're broken or doing something wrong. Because you're not broken. Your brain is doing exactly what it evolved to do. It's seeking immediate reward and avoiding immediate discomfort. The fact that this no longer serves you in the modern world isn't a personal failing. It's a mismatch between your neurology and your environment. Understanding this doesn't fix the mismatch, but it changes how you relate to it. Instead of thinking, "Why is this so hard for me?" you can think, "Of course this is hard given the environment I'm in and the way my brain works." Instead of thinking, "I should be better at this," you can think, "This is difficult for everyone and it's getting more difficult every year." This perspective doesn't give you discipline, but it removes one layer of the problem, the layer where you think something is wrong with you for finding discipline hard. Because nothing is wrong with you. Discipline is supposed to feel like this, like fighting a current, like being divided against yourself, like exposure and discomfort and effort that never quite becomes easy. That's not a bug. That's what discipline is. The question isn't why discipline feels uncomfortable and unnatural. The question is, now that you understand why it feels this way, what do you do with that information? You can't change your neurology. You can't opt out of the environment you live in. You can't make the discomfort go away, but you can stop being surprised by it. Stop treating it as evidence of personal failure. Stop waiting for the day when discipline finally feels natural, because that day isn't coming. What might come instead is something more subtle. The recognition that the discomfort is the point. That the feeling of resistance is what tells you you're doing something that matters. Not because suffering is noble, but because the things that actually change your life are the things that require you to be someone different than who you are right now. And becoming someone different always feels wrong before it feels right. That's not a solution. It's just the reality of what you're working with. And maybe that's enough.